Welcome to Unscripted with Jeff Pedowitz. I sit down with remarkable people from very different worlds, security and science, business and medicine, technology and the arts, for honest conversations about AI and where it's taking us. No scripts, no talking points, just what they actually think. I'm Jeff Pedowitz. Let's get into it.
Almost everyone I talk to on the show builds AI, studies it, or sells it. My guest today is the person they're all selling to. Zachary Elowitz runs the Enterprise AI Lab at McKesson, a Fortune 10 healthcare company. He's got a PhD in math, an MBA, and he helped write the federal risk framework that everyone cites. So he's the rare person who can tell you what a giant company actually does with AI, what its CEO really wants, and which vendor pitches he throws straight into the trash. That's where I wanted to go. The truth from the buyer's seat in one of the highest stakes industries there is. Zach, welcome to Unscripted. Let's get into it.
Thanks so much for having me, Jeff.
So to starters, and I ask all my guests this, what's a belief about your field that you've recently changed your mind about?
A lot about the use in the branding of the AI agents. I do think in the future they will be really, really embedded in our workflows, and we'll be able to abstract away some of the more manual components or things that don't require the same depth of thought, or it's a really niche area of thought where you can ground the AI in very deep technical knowledge or something that's really specific and focused. But a lot of the talk has been, okay, in 5 years we're going to have AI agents that are replacing humans, and everyone's effectively going to be a product manager for these AI agents. I do think we're going to see in a very slowly growing fashion, these agents are going to become more a part of our work lives. But given the recalcitrance of a number of companies and it not showing the value yet in the ability to have that deeper, broader, multi-thought causal understanding, I'm not seeing the desire for replacing true enterprise leadership and thought. By that, I don't mean C-suite. I mean, you're just really good at your job and you really know what should be done. I'm not seeing we're all going to become product managers of AI as soon as I thought we were going to. And I don't think it's going to happen the way that everyone's saying, where it's just going to get replaced and you're going to have AI employees and human employees in the next couple of years. So
there's been a lot of news articles about that over the last few days where tech CEOs are sort of backpedaling and reversing from their not quite doom projections, but probably close. Where they were saying a year ago, hey, AI is going to completely change the workforce, and that they were taking all this heat for laying off all these employees. But now they're coming out saying, well, yeah, not so fast. It's really more recalibrating how we're going to be working together. So that seems like that lines up with what you're saying.
I think so, and. I always like to take what CEOs are saying publicly with more than a pinch of salt, because they're not just saying what they're thinking, they're also posturing for their company competency and their own personal brand. So they're serving a couple of different objectives, not just saying truly what they're experiencing. And also, they're so strategic, they're not in it the same way that your, AI leaders or team leaders who are supposed to be getting involved with these products are.
That's true. I guess, it's a two-letter, so just AI it, we'll just put AI on that. It's no problem, right? So you've got your math PhD, which is awesome, and you could be almost anywhere. So why sit inside a Fortune 10 company versus a think tank or a consultancy or building your own firm?
This is one of a lot of really good places to be. So a couple of things that drive where I am right now. So McKesson is a healthcare and pharmaceutical distribution company. It's very easy to just work somewhere that makes a lot of money, and money is very nice, but gotten to the stage of life where impact is also something I'm really appreciating more and more. I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not the one saving patients directly, but if we don't get medicines out on time, it's literally life or death at moments. So their capabilities that I'm working on now that more efficiently get the medicines out there, which means we have more flexibility for when something does go wrong. There are other initiatives I'm working on that better understand the needs of healthcare providers. There have been a number of incidents, unfortunately, in the past couple of years, for example, with ransom attacks on hospitals. So capabilities that could address the resiliency in those sorts of situations, where if there was an emergency, we could anticipate their needs and same day act, which would ensure that they have the medications to serve their patients. So there's the actual impact on end people part that I appreciate. And additionally, my job is before I say what it is, there are tons of amazing AI and technology leaders at McKesson. I am just one of them, but my job is different. A lot of them are embedded within their specific areas of the business, and they are working on really, really important initiatives and don't have the time or excess bandwidth of personnel to be able to work on some of those higher risk initiatives that the business needs to be working on, but also has a higher risk of not turning into a production capability. So my team exists to de-risk the boldest ideas for AI that we have at McKesson, capabilities that we legitimately don't know going into it. Maybe we have questions about how big the impact will be, or even if it's going to work out at all. It's pretty cool getting to go in and not be focused on the flashy aspect of what's the fanciest AI I can use, but which is what you see a lot on LinkedIn, but really getting into, okay, AI or data science or whatever word you want to use is a real spectrum of capabilities. How do I actually figure out how I can make a magnificent difference in the business, in practice, with the data, with the infrastructure, with the people we have today, with these sorts of technologies? And so it's a huge, it's not even just an AI problem, it's getting your internal customers excited. Do you have the right underlying infrastructure and data? Are the other processes even compatible with this idea? And proving out an idea enough to show its value. And I said de-risk. I call it that because we only do prototypes. We show the feasibility and potential before we ask you, the business, to commit resources. So it's a really cool opportunity.
I know you guys are innovating all the time. And you had a goal recently, right, of some of your prototypes to generate a revenue number from some of your AI, right? I think you had targeted something like $1 billion.
Yeah.
Could you share what that was and how you went about doing that?
We've had a couple of them. The billion in AOP in profit, recurring profit, year over year is a huge initiative. Started at McKesson a couple of years ago. The billion in profit is going on for the next couple of years. There's a smaller one we definitely contributed to recently. I can't get into details, but what I will speak to is at that point when you're talking about huge numbers like that, it's not just AI is good. It is, we have to programmatically be thinking about how we make those innovations and not be saying, I want AI. It's still starting with what are the biggest opportunities we can have in our business. AI is one of the tools, and then filtering down to which ones are aligned. Additionally, on top of that, one of the reasons I like enterprises having these, the term is BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goals, is because it pushes you to really think outside of the box and push harder and track what's actually going on. Whereas if you were still going in your day-to-day and trying to improve and not necessarily thinking as broadly, you might not be disrupting your own work flows as impactfully as you should, because there's not that top-down pressure upon you. So one of the biggest advantages of that program was getting everyone to really say, this is what I can do, and also implicitly, this is what I can't. And if the numbers weren't high enough, there was a real conversation about why why isn't it? And the answer could be something completely legitimate about the business, or there's another major transformation happening, but it forces every part of the organization to really explain and, more importantly, have some introspection about what is and is not possible.
Are there some specific use cases or projects that you can share that you guys have worked on?
One I particularly like recently was about more efficient sourcing of resources. What I basically oversimplifying it is big enterprises are just so enormous that it's sometimes very hard to see how and why decisions were made, even within the same process. And sometimes these have existed for so long, you don't even always know the rationale as to why certain numbers or decisions were made. The initiative that we worked on was for more efficiently sourcing inventory from other McKesson distribution centers rather than purchasing net new inventory from the manufacturers that we purchase from. What I really love about it is everyone's talking about generative AI and all of its capabilities, which there are many of them, but people shouldn't be focused on flash. They should be focused on impact. This project was a lot more like pure optimization, a lot less on the forecasting, but optimization and simulation over multiple thousands of tries and seeing what the impacts were each time to figure out, could we more effectively basically borrow from a different distribution center and bring it to this one so we can source, so we can better supply our end customers. And it's a surprisingly complex problem because, yeah, you can always do that, but what does it meaningfully mean to actually save money doing that versus you've just created a headache shuffling things around the country? And what was really fantastic and interesting about it is we identified that a lot of the initial assessments from a number of years ago were based on really, really competent individuals' intuitive understandings of the situation, which either weren't necessarily mathematically optimized, or they were and they no longer hold, but we were able to show a much more efficient way that saves 8 figures in working capital a year, while having no disruption on the business, and we were able to do it within the risk tolerances of our supply chain organization. So it was a fantastic event that was a combination of
So really, I mean, for any company that deals with global supply chain issues, it's complicated. So if you can leverage your existing inventory and facilities before you have to repurchase, that's a huge win.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I was at Fortune Brands Innovation, Fortune 500 manufacturing. They own brands like Moe and Yale Masterlock, and I had some similar high-figure impacts by having AI and the data very clearly laid out, as not getting into any of the politics of it, but the mid-early 2025 era had a very dynamic tariff policy, and figuring out how to adjust to that, having those underlying capabilities for understanding the tariff implications, cost, how our customers would respond, enabled us to act really, really quickly on 9-figure decisions.
That's right. So you've now done this across healthcare, manufacturing, banking, and consulting. What is the common variable that carries over, and then what's unique about doing it within healthcare?
Things that carry over, not losing sight of what matters. The core way I approach a problem is nearly identical. What does success mean? If you can't clearly articulate what you're trying to accomplish, whether it's time savings, financial savings, de-risking, whatever it is, if you don't start from there, then you're wasting your time because you often end up just on a side quest. So the methodology and what you're trying to talk about is the same. It's how can I accomplish X, Y, Z? What's unique about healthcare is the impact to people. When I was, helping ship faucets, it's unfortunate. It's bad for the customer. It's bad for business if the faucets are late, but no one's life is on the line. Whereas here, there are some really, really unique specialty products that if they don't get there in time, their potency is diminished, and the person might need them in an extremely timely manner. In addition, there's also some emotional reward that encourages you. One of the things I actually talked about at one point was seeing if we could quantify the number of lives saved, which is very difficult to do, and I'd love to see it on a dashboard, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
I would love that KPI. I think that would be tremendous. Working at a Fortune 10 company, what do CEOs actually want from AI beyond the keynote version that people see in public? Like what are they telling you internally?
The first thing is AI is just a buzzword in a lot of ways to them because they're not involved with it. What they understand is they're seeing their peers seeing on LinkedIn claiming to have major transformations. They want to understand how they can have those sorts of benefits. They want to figure out how they can save money. They want to figure out how they can increase revenue. They are never trying to get rid of people. They are trying to figure out the best way to serve the company's value, and unfortunately, sometimes people's roles and that kind of aren't super aligned. So that's one of the things that gets a lot of attention in the news. So they're not trying to be evil. They're serving the business, not serving individuals, which is a real tough emotional place to be. The other thing they are really looking at that I do think is novel is how do you fundamentally change your ways of operating with the customer as a result of this really innovative new capability? So I might, the procurement capability I talked about earlier, where I could more efficiently source inventory, that took an existing capability and made it a bit better. That's just an incremental change. But right now, you're starting to see people's ways of working with the internet fundamentally change from AI. You're not necessarily going and Googling, where should I buy XYZ? You're saying, what should I buy? I have this underlying problem, and you're going to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whoever. Who you're going to and how you're operating. The future of healthcare, where you have to go in person to see the doctor and get some help from them in order to get medicine, that changed a bit with technology and COVID, where it's online. Next step is, for low-risk prescriptions, do you really even need to see a human doctor anymore, or could that be fully AI done through an app in your phone, so you could do it in real time as an incident is happening? How can I change how I serve my customer better so I can get a long-term strategic distinctive advantage over my competitors?
I'm sure companies could innovate more, right? But we often see, even without AI, this overbearing compliance with HIPAA, right? So these apps are very difficult, very structured. They're not patient friendly, but companies are over pivoting to be HIPAA compliant. So how do you now, with an age of AI, still be HIPAA compliant, but design things that are really patient first, a better user experience, and optimize that patient experience?
I think what's going to happen in practice is there's going to either Amazon will do it, which I've heard rumblings that they're working on capabilities like this, or there will be some person or small team that builds this capability in a way that they get the in somewhere and they get enough of attention that other people realize it's possible, and because they aren't taking the giant governance risk of being the first company to do it, and they see someone has gotten even moderate success, I think that'll be enough to kick off the change of engagement.
is this all within that area of admissible risk that you talk about? Like what are things that make sense, and where do you draw the line in healthcare? Like what's not an admissible risk?
Yeah, that definitely falls into the admissible risk thing. So every time you're building any project, and AI is one it particularly needs to be focused on, you need to figure out how badly are you willing to tolerate a failure. So what is the risk you can take on? A lot of people will say, oh, in space or in healthcare, like there is no admissible risk, but there is always a risk. That is not how the world works. So in terms of, anytime you see a medicine or go get a medicine, they read off all of the potential risks there. These are already happening. It's not a net new thing.
I mean, one way that like people are going to die, the same thing like space. You're going to go into space. It's inherently dangerous, right? Or you're going to be treating patients. But do you have a goal of 0? Sure. But practically speaking, probably not going to happen. But can you reduce the likelihood of, by a significant probability?
And I think it's really important to state and quantify what that risk is. This is oversimplifying it, and this is not the sort of healthcare problem I work on at McKesson, but building out a medicine, if it could save 10,000 people a year by reducing issues with diabetes, are you willing to tolerate the risk of one death a year from misuse or medication or status comorbidities? What are you willing to do there? And I think you need to be willing to say, this is really a stark way of saying it, but am I okay with the possibility of someone actually dying if I can save, this is, the train paradox, of course, but diving into those possibilities, I think is really important to do with every AI capability you're building, because you need to understand what impacts you're willing to tolerate, and keeping in mind, in a lot of rule-based logic, sometimes those risks are a lot more clear, whereas AI, because of its capability to do broader without being expressly told, is fantastic, but it's the same dynamic nature that can make its risk area challenging to foresee and broader.
Yeah, I mean, look, all these things, they sound cold when you speak them out loud, but in practical theory, it makes sense. Over the weekend, my wife and I were considering, getting a Tesla. I guess finally joined the bandwagon, and we were doing the self-driving thing, and we were just having this extensive conversation. Like, you think about all the testing that went into this, to make sure a car could actually drive by itself, safe, and how many steps it had to get through. But it was still an engineering challenge, and cars will still crash. There's still human error, right? Computers can make error, but if it can reduce the number of accidents per year, if it can reduce the number of fatalities per year, even though there still could happen, right? It's better, right? I mean, you're trying to make it better overall.
I think that's a fantastic area for talking about admissible risk. A lot of people feel more comfortable if a human's behind the wheel, but you see how often people are crashing. If statistically there are fewer deaths and fewer injuries by a meaningful margin with technology, then can you even tolerate the additional risk of a human driving? Or being the primary driver, if not, available to make last-minute change? There are a lot of biases we have with it.
No, absolutely. So you buy from companies, I'm sure, all the time, different AI vendors. So I'm just curious, with all the pitches you must get constantly, like, how do you know what to trust and what not to trust, and where does a company like McKesson make investment decisions, and where does it not?
The first part, the build versus buy mentality, there are really only two reasons that I build. One, there's such a financial impact from doing so. We're going to a vendor would be so exorbitantly expensive compared to what I'm getting internally, and that could be because I need something really niche, could be I need a lot more insight than the majority of people need, or it is not something that is going to meaningfully distinguish my business or product from its competitors. What's a good example? In the long run, McKesson has a bazillion contracts, and we need to be able to extract all the information out of there. I think that in the long run, it's possible that we don't necessarily, we definitely have some platforms for extracting information, but unless you dedicate a team to it and staying up to date with the broadest, newest capabilities, you're spending resources on that when there are other teams that are outside the company that are going to be continually working on it forever, and it's going to get cheaper. Is it really worth investing the people in that when there's something specific to your business that could then have an accelerated impact from paying a little bit extra to the outside? So that's the build versus buy. And then listening to vendors. There are so many that come to me, I don't even respond to them all. If the ways that you have me pay attention, one, if a peer of mine, if someone I know has used them before and they can say what the problem they solved was, I'd be willing to pay more even because I believe in them. People are like, oh, you can try it out for free. I'm like, there is no such thing as trying things out for free. That means I'm taking people from what they're working on, I'm investing weeks into your capability, or I'm risking the enterprise by maybe providing access to our data. There is no such thing as a free trial. So reputable person I know, if they can provide customers that can speak to me. I've had companies literally say, here, talk to this person over here. They had a similar use case, and they could explain from my perspective what they cared about. They had no incentives. Or three, they could really describe, when you talk to a salesperson, they have so many buzzwords they talk through. If they can really get into what the fundamental problem is and explain it in a way that shows they've experienced it themselves and how this product, and demonstrate how this product has really made that shift, then I'm a lot more likely to go there. And also, you're obviously always biased a bit by how big your desperation is. If you really need something soon, you're going to give something a shot.
That's true. So in closing it out, what's the one thing that you're paying attention to right now that most people aren't yet?
Quantum computing. The federal government had said at one point we need to get our post-quantum cryptography ready. I think it was 2035. Now they're saying you need to be ready by 2029 or 2035. I know this isn't a direct AI capability, but quantum computing could dramatically accelerate some AI capabilities, both in terms of speed of inference, ability to train models potentially, but if you can get through cryptography, are our banks safe? Is our data safe? HIPAA, if there's no way to properly protect it, does it even matter at that point? I know that's crazy over the top, but in the first entrance to have true post-quantum cryptography breakthroughs, if post-quantum cryptography protections aren't there, they won't even say anything and we won't even know. That sort of technology is getting a lot of attention in very small circles, but there's so much hype on AI that not enough people and not everyone is paying attention to it yet, and hopefully not, but curious if it's in a timely enough manner.
Awesome, Zach. We could easily go for another half an hour. we got to wrap for today. Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you being on Unscripted, and we'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Good seeing you.
You got it.